Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Paramindful, a bi-weekly show where myself, Alex, and Karl, we talk about all things spooky-ooky-ish. I am your co-host, Malball. Over there, well, I'll figure out the directions eventually, is Alex, and down there is Karl. Karl, how are you doing today?
I am doing absolutely fantastic. The
Awesome.
start to 2023 has been absolutely amazing so far, and we're just going to roll with it, and it's all good.
Excellent. Excellent. I'd like to hear it. And Alex, how's the new year treating you so far?
Good. I'm not working. Well, I'm working, just not on overtime.
So say, whoa, hold on.
That's a win for me, all right?
We'll
overtime,
take it. We'll take it.
Overtime starts next week.
We'll take it, hey?
How are you, Mel?
So we've got a fun episode set up for you today. We've got it took us a little bit to figure out. We got a finger from Karl.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Alex asked how you were doing, Mel.
Yeah.
So we should
Hey,
politely
going right
answer
past
his
it,
question.
clearly how much I wanted to talk about it, right? No, 2023 has been a great start for this Malball. I am planted my feet on the ground and I am running forward. We've had some great stuff at the end of the year, and we have even more stuff planned for this year, like this episode. Which we were discussing what we wanted to kind of figure out for this one, just because we did want to move our fun little 2-episode special there so that we can ensure that we have our fun, amazing guest, Corporate Joe, coming on with us. So we thought about it, we brainstormed. I don't remember which one of you guys who was one who said it. I think it was Alex. We just went, yes, that is our topic. Our topic this week, Paramindful, is the creepy and ever curious black-eyed children, the phenomenon that seems to have taken North America, especially by storm in the last century. Karl, you got some more information on these guys. Why don't you take it away and introduce us to the black-eyed children?
Sure.
Kids.
Black-eyed kids.
Depending on
yes. So the creepy black-eyed kids or black-eyed children are not the spawns of the black-eyed peas. We'll get that out of the way. They are not. I mean, I don't know. They might be, but they're not.
I don't know. There's something about Fergie. I'm just saying.
Right? Right?
I also don't know the other guy's name, so I couldn't.
Will I Am part of that?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Goodness.
They're a little creepy themselves.
A little bit odd.
But these are totally different children that we're talking about here. So the black-eyed children are really beings that resemble kind of eerie kids with pale white skin, pitch black eyes that are essentially going around and asking their victims for simple, harmless favors to be done for them, either, coming to their house or just coming up to someone unexpectedly. So it's quite a weird phenomenon that's happening. Now, a lot of people have said that this phenomena is really just based off of internet lore. So different sites out there like Creepypasta or different subreddits have really kind of embraced all of this. And that's essentially where people figure that it's come from. It has not. In North America, at least, we have our very first real tangible report on the black-eyed children that happened in 1996. So really not that long ago. Although it's said to have started kind of back in the 1980s in North America, it has been reported after this report came out that back in the 1950s and even like 1974, reports of this have happened outside of North America in different countries. Brian Bethel is the one who really brought all of this to light and focus in North America, himself being a journalist in Texas, in Abilene, Texas, described an evening that he had where he was out driving around in his vehicle and he went to a parking lot. Inside this parking lot, which was close to a local movie theater, he was just sitting there writing a check. And
Sure.
right,
Sure.
right. He
Conjuring the
was
devil at the old
writing a
Ouija
check.
board.
We have no idea because we're just going by what his report is. We have no idea what extracurricular activities he was involved in, but he says he was writing a check. He didn't notice anything out of the ordinary until he noticed these two children that had come up to his vehicle. He was so enthralled with what he was doing, which kind of leads me to believe that he wasn't just writing a check, that he didn't notice these kids until they started actually tapping on the driver's side window. So he actually rolled the window down, and immediately he says that he was hit with his words, a soul-racking fear. So the older boy had said to him, you know what, like, hey, me and my brother, we want to go catch a movie, but we forgot our money at home. And the older boy asked for a ride to their home so that they could get the money. What was odd about this, and as innocent as it was, because I've had children come up to vehicles that I'm in as well and be like, hey, I'm lost, or I need something, or whatever. Like, as innocent as it is, as children are, what really got him was that the movie had already started, which was going to be the last movie of the night. So even if he were to have let them in to his vehicle, drive them home, and drive them back to the theater, they would not have had time to actually catch the movie, which would have been over essentially by that time.
Mm-hmm.
So all of this kind of caused a little bit of feeling of doubt and concern. What added to that as well is that this older boy had kind of sat there or stood there and was like, you know what, like, we're just children. We're just trying to get somewhere. And one of the biggest things is that he reports that they said they didn't have a gun. So immediately he kind of got his, doubts and concerns and maybe a little bit of paranoia mixed in there as well. So he told them, you cannot come into my vehicle. The only way you can get in here is if I invite you in. And then he decided to roll the window up and immediately, as quickly as he could, left the premises, put the pedal to the metal, and tore away. So it's kind of easy to disbelieve his story based on some of the things that we know now about having to allow them into the home.
Right.
By telling them, different things like, hey, you can't come in, or, all of these different things that kind of go along with the lore of the black-eyed children. But it's just, it's interesting. And to forever, Brian Bethel has stuck by this story. It has not changed, which kind of leads me to believe that there could be some realism to it, because it hasn't changed. Nothing's added to it. Nothing's taken away from it. It's exactly the same.
And that's the beauty about the truth, right? You don't have to make anything up about it, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm torn. I don't know. I'm torn.
It's excuse me. It's interesting that you said we don't have a gun, or they said we don't have a gun. You said that they said.
Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed me over here. I just wrote down, because some things popped in my head, because this has been a subject that I've been super, super interested in a long time, or for a long time, I should say. That's not the first time they've ever said things like that. So that's not what I'm going to talk about here. But to your point, there are stories where they say things, and the way they word things are kind of what give people that, wait a second, kind of feeling.
Right.
So what popped off in my head was, there's one where they said, we're not dangerous or anything. So I'm like, okay, maybe I could let that one slip. Like, hey, let us in. We're not dangerous, right? There was one where they said, we won't hurt you. But the one that gets me the most, and this is like there were like 3 people home in this story. I don't remember it offhand, but there were 3 people home in this story, and all 3 of them have corroborated, and the story has never changed. But the kid said, "We aren't allowed to come in unless you invite us in." And I've like, it's almost like vampire. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
just listening to your story, just clued in. I'm like, isn't that the way that vampire? Well, not actually vampire, but you know what I mean. There's that lore where vampires need to be invited in to be able to.
Mhm. Mhm.
Anyways,
And
sorry, that's what I was looking up here for. I wasn't not paying attention. I was just.
No,
and
totally
it's
understand.
interesting that it's like them always trying to give that kind of comfort because
Because they suck at it.
the visual of children, as Carl mentioned, it's like it's supposed to give an immediate feeling of comfort, but it's very obvious that by their nature of what it is that they truly are, they can't actually provide that, given how instinctually fearful that guy was. Um,
I, I,
but then,
I do have to. I just want to quickly mention that I kind of skipped over. So
Mhm,
we talk about these children being like total black-eyed children.
mhm,
Bethel actually reports that until he disconnected eye contact with the children, their eyes were perfectly normal. But
Yeah.
when he made his way back, is when he noticed that they were black. So
mm,
kind of when he was like, you know what, like, no, I'm not letting you into my vehicle, he kind of turned away, turned back to then see that their eyes were black. So like almost we talk about seeing red when we're angry, right?
mhm,
Almost kind of the same thing with these
Yeah.
children, where if they get frustrated or angry, well, now this change is starting to happen, this
mhm.
metamorphosis of sorts, and their eyes actually turn black.
It could be. That could very well be. Very interesting.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
coming from someone who's just not a fan of children in general, the likelihood of me opening my door to one at night is going to be very, very slim unless something is on fire or there's an emergency.
No,
Um,
even if their house is on fire, you can sit on the porch. That's as far as.
if my house is on fire, then please let me know to come out of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, don't come to my door looking for to borrow my phone. You're probably going to get just a cup with a piece of string hanging on it and have a good night, child.
Talk to the cup and string, and then I'll put the cup and string to my phone, and we'll see what we can do.
Pretty much. That's how you can talk to your parents through there.
That's right.
Um, very, very interesting. Alex, how do you think about that story there?
Well, the more like details I hear you guys bring up, like even before we started recording here,
Mhm.
the more ideas pop into my head. Um, so you were saying, like, you had just mentioned that you think that maybe it's possible that when they get angry, their eyes turn black.
Right.
Have you ever heard of like, I think we mentioned this in a previous video. When people see aliens, a lot of times their brain is whatever configured to think that they're owls. You know what I
Right.
mean? So maybe
Oh, okay, yeah.
Mothman.
transfixed, and they're like, "Oh yeah, no, you see our eyes, but they're blue or they're green," or and then like when you're like,
Mhm, mhm,
"Wait, what the? Wait a second."
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like maybe when they
Yeah.
mhm,
they lose that, for lack of a better word, the psychic connection. Maybe it's like,
mhm,
"Oh shit, they're
mhm,
black. This isn't right," you know. But
mhm,
I also
mhm,
find it very, very kind of telling that, when you meet somebody and you're like, that person is bad news bears, and you
Mm.
still
Just
don't get that, but you still don't get that, like, holy fuck, holy shoot, this is like, this, this is a very bad thing. It's just like,
mhm,
that person's kind of a dick or whatever. But
yeah.
for the
mhm,
amount
mhm.
of stories that you come across, dollars to donuts, 99% of them are going to say, I felt absolute dread, or I felt absolute horror, or it felt like
Mhm,
all the happiness was sucked out of my body. I just find that very interesting, very
mhm.
Men in Black-ish. So,
Yeah.
And something I actually just thought of also in regards to the projection. Could the them bringing up the, oh, we won't harm you, we don't have a gun, we don't have this, is it maybe them creating that psychic link there also. And because, like, obviously in that situation, again, if someone's at my door after 9 p.m., chances are you're going to be met with suspicions from me if I am not expecting you. So, like, would that be them establishing the connection and going, oh, this person's thinking that I'm going to harm them. Oh, I'm not going to harm you.
Right.
Like,
But
is that kind of establishing that mental connection also, maybe?
I think you're probably right, but I think it's kind of like a telltale that maybe they're like maybe they're, well, I don't think personally I don't think they're human, but maybe it's a telltale
Mhm.
sign that they aren't human because they don't know how to um, create that sense of ease. Or like, hey, I don't have a gun. I
Mhm.
swear to God, there's like we don't have guns. You know what I mean? Like it's creepy. Oh,
Right.
Join us.
so like maybe it's their attempt at trying to like ease your mind because they can
Mhm.
sense that you're like something's not right here,
Mhm.
and they have like whatever play option A, we don't have guns, or play option B, we're not here to hurt you.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they start going through the list of things that
Like a video game.
potentially could work to bring your comfort level up, but the
Yeah.
more they try, the more creepy they are because they haven't necessarily made the association that most adults think that children are creepy.
Like a video game, right? It was like, well, would you like to start a
Yeah.
fight with this man by saying this? Would you like to trade with this man by saying this? Or would you like to leave?
Yeah,
Right.
interacting with the black-eyed children is like an RPG.
There you go. It's Dragon Age.
Terrifying. Terrifying. If anyone's played the Dragon Age, they know exactly what we're talking about because there's a lot of demon interaction in those games. Let me tell you. And they are just as comforting as these black-eyed children. Maybe that's where the idea for that came from. Who knows?
That's a good question.
Segueing from here, speaking of the stories, we did kind of, like I mentioned earlier, I've pretty much heard it a lot in North America, but we did kind of see in our investigation, our research, this isn't necessarily the case. Is actually fairly widespread. Karl, where were some of the stories that you kind of noticed that a lot of these kind of black-eyed children things were coming from?
I'm going to be totally honest with you and say that I was not able to find outside of, like, I was able to find reports that there were talks about the black eyed children, but
Mhm.
never was I able to find like a spot as to exactly where, just outside of North America,
Right.
or it would say in other countries. It never really
Oh, okay.
specifically said where.
Okay. Alex, how about yourself?
I found
Oh,
it wasn't as vague as I thought it was going to be. I never found like whatever outside of Minsk or outside of Prague or whatever. What I got was um, it would be countries in the old Soviet bloc, so whatever Georgia or whatever, right?
mhm.
Um, but they would never list a city or a place. The ones I found that were in North America were a little bit more narrowed down. I have one for Vermont here that I'm going to talk about in a bit, but I've also heard of ones in England, and they only go to the Shire, whatever Shire it is in England. So if y'all don't know, it's not Lord of the Rings.
There's no hope, it says there.
Like Worcestershire or whatever. Other one.
Yorkshire.
Yorkshire.
Yeah. I also noticed a distinct kind of, like, it was more of a North American, more of a European, and I did see kind of like a Romanian stories kind of coming out there, but they did kind of seem to be very absent from like the African area, the Asian area, and the South American area. And something I wanted to discuss is, do we maybe think that this is because this is where these children, or the faith predominantly in these areas, are what lures whatever evil is these children? Or do we maybe think that the areas perceive the black-eyed children as something else entirely?
I have
Alex, what do you think?
I have an idea that just popped in my head.
Oh.
What if they're not known well, obviously they wouldn't be known as black-eyed children in
Mhm.
for example, like Congo because it's French, but
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like it'd be called something else. But what if they call it whatever? There's like an African word for it. I didn't
Mhm.
think about checking that. You know what I mean? For like the
Mhm.
countries that I couldn't find anything in South America. So maybe in South
Hmm.
America they have a different word for it. You know what I mean? Maybe it's the same thing, but they
Mhm.
call it something, and it's like a demon child, or you know. Didn't even cross my mind that I
Mhm.
should look for that. So maybe in Africa they have whatever name it would be, but because it's not going to be
Mhm.
black eyed kids in French either. So
That's true. That's true.
I mean,
And like in movies and television, pop culture stuff like that, typically like you'll see things like possession be represented with the blackening of the
yeah,
eye or something like that. So maybe in that area or in Africa, possession, as we had discussed in our last video, maybe voluntary, involuntary, benevolent or not. um, maybe that is their version of what that is. But that being said, the possession is obviously very aggressive and it takes over an already existing kind of thing. With the black-eyed children legend, there doesn't seem to be any ownership of the children. It's never people that you kind of like know or children you recognize from the area or something. It's like children that are unrecognizable, almost created spontaneously. Um, I don't know. What do you think about that, Carl?
I mean, I'm going to go back a little bit to Africa.
Hmm.
So the children usually range between the age of 6 and 16. So
Hmm.
now you would kind of also ask the question about, like, is it maybe kind of like a spiritual or even a religious type of situation or understanding of things? Well, that kind of clicked something in my head. We see it a lot more prevalent in North America because of how it's talked about and how it's been showcased even through films that have been made and stuff like that. Whereas kind of over in that area, we're looking a little bit more differently at different religions that are there. So now we understand and know that there's like Christianity that's over there, but there's also comes into play voodoo that is over
Hmm.
there as well, and is maybe a little bit of the voodoo a scary situation maybe for these children, so they're
Hmm.
not being shown there? Or is the practice of the different voodoo kind of a thwarting of these different bad things, or these different demons, or these different
Hmm.
entities that are around as well? I'm sorry that I just took things off into a totally different
Hey,
direction there, but that
this
like
is why we
just
like it on Paramindful.
it popped into my head. I'm like, voodoo. What if there's something having to do with voodoo that um, is keeping them at bay?
yeah, like
Let's
witch
say,
doctors are
right?
super powerful or whatever, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
because we
Weren't
really
there
don't have
rumors
that
about
here in North
something like
America.
that happening in World War II with the Wiccans in England doing a protection ritual to protect the UK from the invading Germans? That
Yeah.
could potentially be something if they have a different religious belief. They could be
Maybe they opened something.
or closed it.
I thought of something, and it should have been the elephant in the room, but it wasn't.
Hmm.
Black-eyed kids are never reported as being anything but super pale white. That would clearly stand out in Africa.
That's also very
Yeah.
true. That's also very true.
It leads me into thinking, like, Men in Black. Do they have Men in Black in Africa as well? Because they're always touted as being super pale or almost like ghostly, kind of like corpse paint, heavy metal almost. And I
Hmm.
realize it's like it's bringing race in. It's not what I mean. I don't mean anything negative by it, but legit, you know.
That is a very interesting point.
Yeah.
I just thought of that. I was like, wait a second, maybe they don't have it because they can't hide there.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know. Don't bring that up to Will Smith. He might come up and slap you.
Or mind wipe you.
Ooh, just
Right?
get rid of high school.
Benefits.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I just thought of that and was like, wait a second. I maybe there are stories. I've never heard of whatever a Hispanic black-eyed kid or a African American black-eyed kid or a
Mhm.
indigenous. You know what I mean? Or you know what I mean? It's
It's always
always
us.
Yeah.
they're pale white creepy fuckers. Just
Yeah.
you know? Interesting.
They are.
Sorry, I just like the cogs are rolling in my brain as we're talking, and like all this stuff is kind of
Right.
like
And
as per usual.
now we're trying to figure out what part of the conversation is still appropriate to have on camera.
I'm always like off on tangents, but this tangent actually kind of makes sense, right?
Mhm,
Yeah, it
mhm.
definitely it does.
I am still very curious to know if there is a black-eyed kid for Africa and for South America. You know what I mean? I'm kind of curious what
Mhm,
the name, if there is one, what the name they have, whatever would be, right?
mhm,
So
Right.
mhm. Because let's be honest, some of the other things that you hear, the legends that they apparently have there of the things that are there and the creatures and the spooky ooky ish, that's way more terrifying than two children showing up at your door in the middle of the night.
because what was it was I think it was like Rwanda or Zimbabwe, one of the whatever they have what they believe is like a brontosaurus, but
Mhm.
it's not called brontosaurus. Obviously, it's like Mokèlé-mbèmbé or something very similar.
Yeah, I've heard of that one. Yeah,
We would have
yeah.
never heard of because it's in a dialect, some African dialect that we don't know, right? So
Right.
I mean, that's a whole different show that we can
for
talk
sure,
about, but how likely is it that there's potentially stuff living in the
Congo,
forest somewhere that we haven't found, right?
in the Congo, there's
Right.
legit. There's legit. A little tangent. There's a legit scientific paper. They went in there and they found a chameleon fish. They found a marsupial, so related to kangaroos, that lives in trees, and they found birds that they had thought were extinct for hundreds of years that are all living deep inside the Congolese jungle, because it takes a minimum of 2 days to hike into as deep as these scientists went. So I thought that was pretty interesting. It's a scientific
That is
paper.
pretty interesting.
If y'all doubt me, I can link it, but it was really
One of
interesting.
those topics we'll have to
Yeah,
bring up at a later
it has
date for sure.
nothing to do with paramindful stuff unless you're thinking about what's living in the jungle that we don't know.
Right.
Heck, what's living in our forests that we don't know, let alone the jungle.
Predator.
Going on from the black-eyed children, sorry, for a moment here. Alex, you had mentioned that you had a story of the black-eyed children actually being invited in
I
and the
have,
results that came from that.
yeah. So I have two. One of them
Oh.
is far more fresh because I have it written down. The other one is a memory from, well, it's not even memory. It was an audio story. It was on the radio, and somebody had written it in a book. I just couldn't find the actual text to be able to write it down to be able to tell you guys. But
Okay.
the one that I'm going with right now, it happened in Vermont. It didn't specify where in Vermont, which is why I often say take it with a grain of salt. Take everything with a grain of salt because there are so many people out there that will lie with these stories to, you know what I mean, make it super
Oh
creepy.
yeah.
Anyways, so it's an elderly couple, and they're at home, and it's late at night, and they hear knocking at the door. They're like, "Well, what would that be? It's so late. Who is that? Why would they knock?" The knockings became kind of like tappings and stuff, and so this old lady, she goes and answers the door, and she says, "Can I help you?" It's these two children. They're about 8, 9 years old, and one's about 14, 15-ish, and they say, "Our parents will be here soon. May we come in?" So very proper English, not like, "Hey, we're stuck. My parents are on their way. Do you mind if we stay inside where it's warm?" Because it was apparently a snowy evening. So, it's not colloquial English. It's very proper, right?
Yes.
So they made a point to point out that this elderly woman said that these children did not make eye contact with them. Their heads were kind of like aimed down and kind of like, "Hey," almost like they were shy.
Okay.
So the couple was hesitant to let them in, but they did, obviously, because they're elderly people, and elderly people are really nice, and especially when it comes to kids, you know what I mean? Like it's grandparents are awesome. Let's be honest here.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
most
Yeah.
grandparents, let's say. So they let the kids in, and the kids sit on the couch, And the elderly man, so he was married to the elderly lady, obviously, starts asking them questions, but they're not answering the questions. Like, hey, what are you doing out so late? How did you find yourself out here? They also mention that this house is not it's not in suburbia. This is in kind of like the middle of nowhere. Like, how would these kids have gotten here, kind of thing? So the kids sit on the couch. The question's going unanswered. All of a sudden, they both look up at this lady and they say, "May we please use the restroom?" Which also creepy, because like both of them apparently said it at the same time. So yeah, which bizarre. Maybe they're twins. Who knows? But they say, or sorry, the story goes that that's when the lady noticed their eyes, and she referred to the eyes as being cosmic or celestially black, like a starry night, which is terrifying. Uh, so when these kids go to the washroom, and it's both of them went to the washroom, which is also weird. Um, she turns around and says to her husband, "Did you see their eyes?" And the husband doesn't reply with words. He shows her his hand. His hand is covered in blood from a pouring bloody nose. And so what happens is the old lady goes to see if the kids are still in the washroom or whatever, kind of like get them out and like leave my house kind of thing. And the kids are standing at the end of the hall just staring at her, which is terrifying. So, yeah, here's where it gets extra creepy. So the power goes out, and so this woman's in this hallway with these two kids, and Lord knows, the kids both say at the same time, "Our parents are here." And they exit the house, leaving the door open, and they walk towards two slender and I don't want to call it slender man. That's not what I mean. Two slender and tall men. So not a woman, not a man, not a mom, dad. Two slender and tall men in an older vehicle. So very Men in Blackish. They don't drive new vehicles. They're driving like old school Lincolns, old school Cadillacs. You know what I mean? It's very strange. The thing that got me was the old lady was like, this is how the story is told. The old lady apparently waves kind of like a goodbye, I guess, because I'm assuming, this is only an assumption, that seeing those two adults is kind of like validation that these kids weren't terrifying. You know what I mean? Like they're just weird. Nothing, no wave back or anything. Power goes back on. And for the next week or so, weird things are happening. Like fuses are burning in their breaker box, their breaker panel, that kind of thing. Lights are popping, like not just dying, but like popping. They had 4 cats. All 4 of them went missing. They found one of them, and it was in a pool of its own blood. This is the one that really kind of gets me because it's super interesting, but also kind of, how did they do that almost? So the husband's nose kept bleeding sporadically, randomly. And so he went to go see a doctor. And it turns out the husband had an aggressive skin cancer that was not detected before these kids had shown up. So the story goes that he has passed away. Again, I can't find official proof, you know what I mean? But it's a story. And I mean, we take it with a grain of salt with everything else, right? But every, I don't want to say version, but every one of these stories that I read that was this story were all pretty much the same. They just sort of, it would have been something like, they would have changed the words to like fuse panel had broke, you know what I mean? Somebody would call it the mains if it was in British, if it was Britain, right? That kind of thing. So yeah, I just thought that was kind of bizarre. But I also have another one. So also letting the kids in, and that's the one that's kind of like flooding my brain. So there was a lady who was driving her son. It was late at night. They pulled into a gas station. She left her son in the vehicle, which is a thing you could do back in the day. You can't do that nowadays, people. Don't do that. She went into the gas station. Her son was left in the vehicle. Apparently, according to the mother, this is what the kid said, there was a child who knocked at the door of the vehicle. And so the kid rolls down the window or whatever it was. And the kid's, "Hey, can I get a ride with you?" or whatever, however broken English or proper English or whatever it was. he lets the kid in, just like any kid would do for another child. We're not talking a 15-year-old kid. We're talking a 6-year-old kid, 7-year-old kid. You know what I mean? Somebody young and trusting who hasn't been broken by the world. When the mom came back to the vehicle to obviously leave, go home or whatever, she notices the kid in the back seat and says, "Hey, you need to get out of this vehicle. You need to go home." And so the kid gets out, kid goes home, and we're talking for years after this. These people had strange diseases. They were super sick all the time. Lots of terrible luck. Like animals would die, friends would die. That is just, you could chalk it up to a coincidence, but I don't believe in coincidence. That's a whole different story. Yeah, it's just really bizarre. So that's as far as I can get into that one because I do not remember the absolute specifics, but I do know that if I did find it, there were super specifics. It was like, oh, it was this gas station in this city of this state of the United States of America, and you know what I mean? So there was a lot more to it. It's just that's what I can only remember off the top of my head. So yeah, like inviting them in seems to be like
Inviting evil.
almost like a death sentence, but like a slow and painful death sentence, you know?
Right.
So there's obviously something nefarious going on, but at the end of my first story, I'd mentioned those two tall people. Here's my theory. My theory is having to do with something with the Men in Black. And Men in Black, again, take it with a grain of salt. Who knows? Maybe they're government, maybe they're aliens. Who knows? By all accounts, it sounds like they're aliens, though. Just saying. These kids, maybe they're learning to be Men in Black. I don't know, but it just seems like they act very, very similar. Like they're socially awkward, but not like shy socially awkward. Like they have no boundaries. It's like, may I please use your washroom? Please let me in your house. I promise I won't kill you. You know what I mean? Like it's just, they want to say things that make you feel comfortable, but they make you feel extremely uncomfortable, you know? So,
And like that could realistically, like, yeah, if it is an alien kind of thing, it would make sense because they wouldn't know how to properly respond to us because they lack that kind of almost empathetic kind of emotional capacity that humanity is certainly known for.
they have
That
dictionary.
also being said, if they are an evil entity that is originated here on Earth and it is working with the Slender Man, I mean, that could be a very bad joining
If it's,
team in itself. Got the evils of the world joining with the evils of the outside of the world.
I don't know how I feel about the Slender Man, whole mixing the Slender Man with them. I don't know. I think I told you guys about the tulpas, right? Way back in the day.
About the witch?
The
I
tulpa.
believe you did.
Yeah. So it's like you put enough energy into something and that thing exists. Because
Oh yes, like a poltergeist.
we know where exactly, but it would be like giving energy to the poltergeist, whereas the tulpa is like creating that thing with energy. And I feel like if Slenderman were to, we know where Slenderman existed, like where it started. But I feel like the more energy you put into it, the crazier things start to get. So maybe that's this thing as well. Maybe people heard about whoever the black-eyed kids were, their parents, or whatever. They're Men in Black. You know, maybe it's like, well, you know what? You know what's really creepy? Kids with black eyes. You know what? You're absolutely right. You're right too. You know, just, who knows,
Right.
right? Like at the end of the day, we don't know if it's true or if it's not. But I choose to believe that an elderly woman and an elderly man have nothing to gain from telling the story besides ridicule and embarrassment, you know. And I mean, ultimately, if you're going to be like, yeah, I got my aggressive skin cancer from 2 creepy kids who came into my house. All right, you're
That might be a stretch.
but it's getting you nowhere. You know what I mean? It's not paying. It's not selling a book. It's not selling a movie. There's nothing to it. It's very much like that. Now I don't even remember his name. Area 51. Doesn't matter. Whatever. He brought it up to George Knapp, and then George Knapp basically broke the story about where what was going on in Area 51 at a place called S4. And it's like the story never changes, but he had nothing to gain from it, So,
Right.
yeah.
What an interesting topic we have here today, guys. This, again, like children in general, just kind of just not a Melball thing. Creepy children.
Bob Lazar.
Yes.
That's my example, right? Like he had nothing to gain from it, absolutely zero, except for his life being ruined. And the reason why different story obviously, but the reason why he came out with it was to protect himself. He said, listen, if something happens to me, this is what's going on. So it kind of like, well, maybe we shouldn't kill him, because if we do kill him, then, and maybe that
looks a little sus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So these people telling these stories that are 100% going to mess up their life somehow and not gain them anything, that weighs more to me than somebody who's like, well, I just wrote a book about aliens, but I had this weird alien abduction story I wanted to tell you about. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
Yeah.
they have no skin in the game except to lose, right? So,
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Wow.
over here.
Well, do you guys have any more points that you want to share on these creepy little kids? Oof. I'm gonna have fun sleeping tonight.
No, I mean, I think like we've pretty much covered absolutely everything. I mean, we're always going to have these people that are going to be, kind of giving out some claims or explanations for what these could be. As we've talked about, extraterrestrials or vampires, but it's again with everything that we do here on Paramindful, it's all the unknown. And are we trying to understand it? Yeah, we definitely are. We can't understand everything, and we're not going to be able to understand everything. But we just love talking about this shit.
Yeah.
It's like,
We like the unnaturalness of the natural world.
like if one of you out there is like, shit, I didn't know about black-eyed kids, but I had this story from when I was a kid and I saw black-eyed kids. Awesome,
Send in the story. We'd like to talk about it.
I just
yes.
thought of one. I heard one the other day. I don't know why I didn't write. Holy smokes! Do you guys want to hear another one real quick?
Give it to us. We got time.
Yeah.
So for those who don't know, back in the day, we used to rent videos from a place called Blockbuster. Or if you grew up in a small town like me, it was Crescent.
Here's your history lesson.
Crescent Video and Uptown Video, and they were all VHS. Just so you know, that came before DVDs. Anyways, this guy's story. He said that he was walking. It was 8 o'clock at night ish. He was walking to the movie rental store, which is a really bizarre word to say, movie rental, which never happen nowadays. Anyways, so imagine Netflix but in a building,
Right.
So he notices somebody walking behind him, and it's a kid, and the kid's staying the same kind of distance away and whatever, right? And the kid's getting really, like, the kid walking to the store is kind of getting a weird kind of feeling, kind of weird vibe. Gets to the movie store, and he is in the movie store, and he's talking to the guy at the counter, and he says, there's a real weird kid that's following me, and like I can't really see his eyes. It's just I don't feel comfortable. It's kind of like tell your elders that you're having an issue and they'll protect you kind of thing.
Yeah.
He's like, wait a sec, what does this kid look like exactly? How old does he look, et cetera, et cetera? And the guy said, man, I know exactly what you're talking about. I've never seen them here. I can't believe, you know what I mean? Which I thought, I was like, that's kind of creepy, because that would kind of shows that the guy knows what he's seen it before, right? And so this kid goes and picks out his movies or whatever, and when he turns around, this black-eyed kid is at the door of this movie store. And we're talking small towns. We're not talking people inside this place, right? It's 8 at night, so people are at home with their doors probably unlocked because it's a small town. And there's a sign on the movie store door that says, please come in, right? So kid walks in, and apparently, according to the story, when this kid turns around and sees the black-eyed kid at the door, the guy who is behind the counter, for whatever reason, gets in a scuffle with this kid. and we're talking like a 6-year-old kid, kind of, you know, looking kid anyways, and a whatever, say he's 18, 19 kind of dude, and they get in a scuffle, whatever, and the movie store guy says, "Kid, run home and don't look back." Okay, so the kid, I don't know if he got his movie, I don't know, but he runs home, doesn't look back. He goes back the next day to thank the guy for doing what he did, and he talks to the person who was at the counter, and he said, "Oh, there was a name to this guy too. I don't remember what his name was, but say it's Jeff." "Oh, yeah, no, Jeff called in this morning. He called in and he quit, and he left town. That like it was that quick." And Jeff,
Wow.
this guy says, and like this guy was telling his story. He's like, and legit, I don't know what Jeff's last name was, but I never saw him again in my small town. He was just gone. So his theory, this kid who had been grown up to an adult now, whatever, his theory was that Jeff had come into contact with them before, and this was like his, they can't find me here. And then, oh shit, they found me. I need to get the hell out of here and move somewhere else, kind of thing, right? So he didn't think that the kid had killed him or abducted him or anything like that. It was just this guy was running from these black-eyed kids. So, and there's a little bit more to the story. I can't remember exactly offhand, but I should have written it down. But it was
It's like an It Follows.
almost, yeah. And but like it,
The STI of horror movies.
the chlamydia of bad people. The way he tells it though is like apparently nothing weird ever happened in his town. There was no sightings of UFOs. He had never had any sort of encounters with anything weird before then or since then. It was just this one, and he was thinking he just sort of walked into what was going to happen when it was going to happen. Like there was a scuffle or whatever. The kid would have shown up at the
Bad timing,
right? He was just bad or wrong place, wrong time, right? So
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah, and the weird thing is like it's this guy who's telling the story. So again, we take everything with a grain of salt, but I think it's important to not write everything off. Like I consider myself to be a sculiever, a skeptical believer, and if I can explain something away as something logical, I will do that. But sometimes you just can't. And for somebody to have black eyes, sure, right? You can also have what they call a black eye, where your eye is fucking, where you got punched in the face, right?
Yeah.
Kenny Omega knows all about that.
To have a black sclera, the white portion.
Oh yeah.
You might come across that in prison where people tattoo their scleras or whatever, or outside. Sometimes people do as well. But most tattoo artists won't do it, and you're never going to see it on a grade 6. You're never going to see it on a 6-year-old ever.
No.
You know, a zillion years. You'll never
I don't think they make them that small, no.
You'll never see a kid with his eyes tattooed ever. I swear. If you do, come at me, hit me. I'll give you $1 million. You know what I mean? Tattoos his eyes. Hey man, that was a verbal contract.
Oh no, you might find some like hardened gang kid somewhere. Like
I'm gonna find it
coming
now.
forward like, hey man.
It has to be
You're my
specifically at age 6, not 6 in a day, not 6 in an hour. I want 6. Bingo on it.
Specifically 6 on your birthday, kid. Make it
I quit.
happen. Make your family rich.
If I don't answer at 6:01, you're lost. Yeah, no, I just
Well, and it's interesting to go back to your point, Alex, because like, you know, with hauntings and stuff like that, you know, hauntings can attach themselves, or spirits or demonic presences can attach themselves to things, as we've seen in Annabelle, we've seen with the Dybbuk boxes, we've seen with antiques, all kinds of things. They can attach to people and follow the people around. I've seen on the popular show The Dead Files, which shows Amy Allen, who's a psychic medium, investigating. She has also found like attachments of not just like spiritual, demonic. She's found like nature attachments where, the word escapes me right now. What are they called? Elementals. Are attached to people, or poltergeists. You know, obviously that's a different situation entirely. But there's also been situations she's investigated where alternate dimensional demons or alien beings have attached themselves to individuals and have followed them despite moving. So for me, it kind of lends credibility to that story about, the kid just walking in, wrong place, wrong time on the situation with Jeff, because,
Jeff.
it's possible. It could potentially be, if there is some kind of Men in Black connection there, or an evil entity or something, maybe it is attached to this Jeff character, and maybe it is, following them around.
My
Very
theory,
interesting.
my theory is that there is something. I put more weight behind something physical existing than I'm not saying that mediums are fake. I'm not saying that at all, but it just I like something tangible, and a kid with black eyes is something very physical, and it's not a lady saying, well, he's got attachment from a poltergeist or whatever, because I believe that happens, but I tend to lean to this kid saw something and they didn't get to him fast enough as Men in Black, maybe, I don't know, but this kid saw something. There's a reason why they wanted to do whatever they do to him, So if he's alive wherever he is, hit us up. We got an email somewhere right there.
Are you dead yet?
Your name's not Jeff. If it is Jeff, that'd be awesome, though.
Come on, Jeff.
Come on, Jeffy.
So that being said, I think we're coming to the end of our show here. We're almost getting to that hour-long kind of segment here. So coming to the end here, if you guys are interested in checking out our sponsors, we have an amazing little video that Karl is going to throw up here in a second from Rogue Energy. If you use our promo code OLEPODS, you can get 10% off your amazing order of amazing products. They've got pre-workouts, they have protein, they have hydration. Karl, let's run the video, show the people what they can expect.
Shaker.
Such a fancy video there. I am so excited. I ordered the grape popsicle one. I am waiting for it to come in. I was hoping it would get here before Wrestle Kingdom.
Thanks,
Alas, it did not. And I had to spend until 6 a.m. watching Wrestle Kingdom with no energy. However, we will get that eventually. Getting to the end of this here, Karl, my friend and trusted colleague, where can we find you on social media?
Right there. Take a look down in the ticker below. Linktree. You're going to go to that Linktree, and we may be somewhere over here as well at some point. There we go. Go and check that out. That'll take you to everywhere that you can find myself on the world of the interwebs.
Los Internares. And Alex, if we're looking to find you on social media, where are we going to find you?
I am still not on Instagram. Well, sort of, but not really. YouTube.
Who am I tagging?
YouTube, we can search. Well, you're tagging me. It's just I don't ever post anything. YouTube, it's Werewolf at the Movies. It's also Wei Chi Canon, but I don't expect you to spell that, so I'll put it here somewhere. And I got a new video going up on Wei Chi Canon actually soon about putting LED headlights into a motorcycle.
Hey, how to. We always like those how-tos. And if you're looking to follow a Malball on social media, you can find me at
Linktree?
At Collins Malball on Twitter and Malball Collins on Instagram and Facebook. You can also find me every week, usually on Tuesdays or Wednesdays, depending on when we get around to uploading, on Andre and Malball's Wrestling Talk on YouTube. You can also follow all of the OLE socials that I don't know off by heart, but will be in our description box because I'm efficient at that.
I was like,
And that being said,
Put 'em all in
if you
here.
guys have anything else you wanted to deliver to the lovely people,
yes,
No?
I love your faces. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Should you have any issues, feel free to message that email address right down here. I don't know if it's actually going to be tracking properly, but it's there.
yeah, it's there. We're good.
I don't check the emails, so hopefully one of you guys checks the emails, but maybe I shouldn't
Yeah.
check. Okay, I was like, uh-oh.
Carl is on top of it. If you need
I
any
got-
help with
I
anything,
got like
we
16
don't know
different
how to do
accounts.
it, chances are we know someone who does.
Yeah.
I have 7 accounts or something. It's I have a hard time updating Instagram, so
It's usually
Anyways,
instant, sir.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you, Mel. I appreciate you,
Um,
Carl. So yeah, that's all I had to say.
That being said, guys, I am the Mel Ball. Over there is Alex. Down there is Carl. We will catch you next time. Keep it spooky.